So I had a realization that's like so sinister and evil that I low-key don't even want to like talk about it or speak it into existence, but I'm very confident people that are evil already thought of this, so here we go. So I was writing about like technology in schools this week, and you guys have kind of heard me talk about like I think technology can be a really good thing. I used to be a big proponent of like educational technology earlier in my career, but especially in the last like 3-ish years, it's just gotten so out of hand, and I feel like kids are literally just having so much screen time, and a lot of it is at school on Chromebooks doing these like educational platforms and things. And I was writing about that, and then I was writing about how a lot of tech CEOs and tech billionaires send their children to schools that do not allow any technology at all until 8th grade. And then for high school, it's just computer labs where they're like learning computer skills. Like they're not using the computer to learn class material. It's considered like its own thing, which I think is really positive. And at first when I was thinking about it, I was just thinking about it from like an inequality perspective of like, oh, this is really fucked up that like these people are profiting off of all this technology, but then their kids are like shielded from the harm of technology. Like that's high key evil. And then the real evil thing fucking hit me. And like, I don't mean to sound conspiratorial, and I know I'm gonna kind of sound like tinfoil hat-esque, but I think that these conversations are really, really important to have as our country is doing what it's doing. So this is what my concern is. The kind of pitch of a lot of those tech platforms is that it gives teachers insights into the students. Like we get all these reports about what they struggle with, which as a teacher, I work with those kids every day. I know what you struggle with. But when I was thinking about this, I thought about what would happen if that data about those kids got into the wrong hands. And I know that we have laws to protect student privacy like FERPA and things like that, but look around. Are laws always followed? No, they're not. And hackers do exist. And think about how dangerous and scary it could get if the wrong people had that data. Imagine if I was like a evil politician or CEO or whatever, and I got a data set that showed me by neighborhood or zip code or whatever, what things people struggle with. Do they struggle with seeing messaging and author's purpose in a piece of written work? I can use that to my advantage to put propaganda out to convince these people of something. What if an employer has a bunch of data about people who struggle with math and they see that they struggle with percentages? It's going to be a lot easier for that employer to screw over those employees on their pay, on their raises, and things like that. Same thing with like a banking company. What if a banking company and a mortgage company sees that a specific demographic or area or neighborhood or whatever, or even individual, struggles with compound interest? You don't think that they could use that to then write a predatory loan to take advantage of that person? And so I just feel like I'm starting to connect these dots and click these things together, that I think it's not just the immediate harm of screen time on a child's development that these billionaires want to shield their children from. I think it's also about privacy, and privacy around academic strengths and weaknesses is not something I've ever really thought about before. But once I started thinking about it, I realized just like how fucking scary that is and how dangerous that could get so quickly. And I want to be clear, I don't think that like every educational technology company is like having these backdoor meetings. They're like, oh, how can we use these ELA reports to enable a fascist takeover? But keep in mind, most of these education technology companies pay other companies to store their data. Like, remember when Amazon Web Services went down and it like destroyed the whole fucking internet like a couple weeks ago? And then Oracle has a ton of data centers where they hold data. Like, when it comes to data, it's not just the company name that you see that's involved. There's lots of other key players here, and there have been so many data leaks and so many hacks that I'm starting to just get concerned that we have so much data about what these children struggle with, and it would be so easy for someone to use that data to exploit them in mass, and then like as these children grow into adults, then exploit them as adults.
Don't ask me where I am. There's something important that I need to talk about related to the video that we just saw. So do you remember how I keep talking about how they want your kids in the mines, married or dead? This is a very easy way to have your children be in that situation, any one of those three. I would also like to say that as somebody who grew up, so both of my parents are from the Caribbean. I was born and raised in the United States. Now, I grew up mostly with my mom's side of the family. My father is Haitian. Need I say more? She left him when I was very young, thank God. I love my people, I love my country. My God, Haitian men, you guys, the entire island. I'm going to put Dominican men in there too. You guys do not beat those allegations. Anyway, moving forward. Growing up, my mother's side of the family grew up as agriculturalists. There are very deep indigenous roots that run in my mother's side of the family. It's a long, long story of slavery and the attempted genocide of many indigenous people and successful genocide of many indigenous people. But my mother's side of the family has a long history of Black and indigenous solidarity against all odds on the island. So my mother's side of the family grew up very much as people of the land. Everything that they ate, they either farmed it or raised it. They slaughtered it themselves. They harvested it themselves. They went to school in the meantime. Well, my grandmother and grandfather didn't really. My grandma got to go to like the 3rd grade before she had to leave school and like help out with the family. But her kids, my mom and my aunts and my uncle, they were able to continue going to school. Now, mind you, when my grandmother talks about what their life was like, she was like, oh, well, we were just so poor and everything was terrible. And I am not doubting that, especially when my grandma shares stories about what her childhood was like. That sounds like nothing short of trauma. But she's just like, oh, like we were so poor and we didn't get to get the good food and we didn't get to go to the good places and all of this stuff. Mind you, my mom and all of her siblings, all of her cousins, the whole idea of organic, it didn't get more organic than what my family grew up eating. The amount of health issues that my mom does not have. My mom is 60 and she runs about 3 miles I want to say about 3 miles, maybe like every 5 days, every 4 days during the summertime. And that's just because it's warm. If she was in a place where it was warm every day, she would be doing that basically every day throughout the year. She's 60. But then they come to the United States and they're like, oh no, this is what the good food is. And it's just processed, canned, full of preservatives. But this is what has been marketed as the good food. And the food that they grew up cultivating, that some of the seeds that my grandma was able to bring to the United States, listen, I don't know how she did it. I think this was before TSA. But all of that was considered poor, was considered low class, was considered, ew, don't do that. What are you, brokey? It's also considered fashion. So once upon a time, the idea among upper middle to all of the lower classes when it came to what expensive, hot, like luxury was name brand. You cover yourself in name brand and it's like, oh my gosh, that's how you do it. Meanwhile, all of these like actual 1%ers, the idea of quiet luxury started to become bigger because it's like you're not supposed to see your wealth. You're supposed to see have the signifiers are constantly changing and they're not changing by everybody below the 1%. It's the 1% that's constantly moving the marker so that way the lower class people, all of their little worker bees are constantly trying to catch up, but there is no catching up. The goalpost is in another state. They put a fake goalpost a few feet in front of you. Meanwhile, you're chained. You're chained. You're having a hard time moving a couple inches. But they have a fake goalpost a few feet in front of you so that way they can look from the side and be like, ha ha, look at all those poor. They're doing the same thing with the education system. They're doing the exact same thing with the education system. They've been doing this successfully for the longest time, and I think people are finally starting to catch on to this. The push for more screen time, the push away from the arts, the push away from critical thinking, the push away from phonics and being able to sound out words, which is how a lot of people, they know sight words, but can they read? No. But this is what has been marketed to us as advanced. And then COVID came around and so many people were struggling just to make ends meet. Okay, fine, just give the baby the screen. I just can't handle the screaming anymore. I just can't. Oh, and maybe I can put on a fun program or something like that. So that way, hopefully, mind you, I'm not bashing a lot of these parents because a lot of these parents are just trying to do the best that they can. But also the fake goalpost is right in front of us. And we keep moving towards that fake goalpost thinking that we will arrive. We will be, wait, let me figure out this thought. Like the idea of, oh, once we arrive there, then we will fully experience the education of a first world society kinds of thing. Meanwhile, all of the things that are actually fundamental to a true education, the things that a lot of us grew up with a while ago. Being able to write, using your hand to write things out, the arts, music, critical thinking, put the screens in a corner. That's what's happening in the state away. The fake goalpost of putting technology at the forefront of education, that's the fake goalpost that the education system has been pushing us towards. Pushing. Meanwhile, what the 1%ers are doing is not this. But they've also marketed to us that being able to have those skills, being able to write with a pencil, being able to use cursive, being able to read a paper book, that's for the poors. The concept of a starving artist, like it's all part of this great big thing. Mind you, once upon a time, in definitely Europe, but probably in other countries too, all of the 1%ers, they had to be patrons of the arts. They had to take so much of their money and put it into the arts. A lot of times because the people will revolt and destroy their mansions and kill their families. What am I saying? We got to go back to those times? I don't know, maybe. Don't go slaughtering people, telling people, oh, Shayna told me to do that. I never said that. And this is why I fully believe that removing, in the same way that people ask themselves, who am I without my trauma? Like, what do I believe? What do I enjoy? What is the essence of me if I weren't able to put all of my trauma and put it in a corner? We need to start asking ourselves, what would insert system here look like if capitalism was not at the root of it? If capitalist thinking wasn't so deeply ingrained, and listen, this is no hate, no shade to my grandma. She has just been trying her best, as a lot of people have for the majority of their lives. And if my grandma did not have capitalist thinking or was not taught this to her from her parents and their parents and their parents via thanks to all of the genocide and all of the slavery, then maybe, hopefully, at least before she passes away, she could have such a deep appreciation for the way that she grew up. Maybe not all the trauma, but in the very least, the kind of food that she grew up around. There are people spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to recreate the version of food culture, cuisine that she grew up eating. Meanwhile, she thinks that's what poor people do. What would your style look like if you removed capitalism from it? Would you like certain brands still if there wasn't a status symbol associated to it? Would certain things be cool or not cool? Also, what makes something cool and how deeply associated to it? How deeply associated is the idea of, ooh, I have this and other people don't to it? And along these lines, what would it look like if our education wasn't so deeply entrenched in capitalist thinking? Not thinking, like practices. The application of capitalism is fully like wrist deep in the education system. What would it look like if we removed the entire hand? What would that look like for all children, regardless of what their race is, what they look like, what their socioeconomic status? What would it look like if we removed capitalism from that? I'm not saying that we'll be able to do it in the next 5 weeks, but I think we need to at least start thinking about what that could look like. So that way we can start to realize what is in front of us that we have been ingesting as the norm. Because this should not happen. This is what happens when systems of power want to dumb down educated kids to be the perfect little worker bee. But hey, these are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments. I'm gonna go finish this poop. Talk to you later. Bye.